We will now configure the audio sources, paging and background audio that will be connected to the controller. In the initial release of QTX, only analog audio sources will be supported. When the full feature release occurs, the use of networked audio sources, AVB or Dante, will be supported. We'll be connecting our paging audio source to input 1 and our background audio source to input 2. Our first step will be to configure this in the web interface. Select the Audio Source tab, and then click on the pencil icon to edit the audio source. We'll rename the source name to a relevant name, Paging. As mentioned, only analog audio sources are supported during this initial release of QTX, so the source type will be defaulted to analog, and that will be the only available option in the drop-down menu. Also, only single-device QTX systems are supported in the initial release, so it will only be possible to configure system audio sources on a single QTX controller. In the full feature release, it will be possible to configure a system audio source from another controller. For the time being, the device hostname field will be defaulted to the QTX controller that you're configuring, and that will be the only option available in the drop-down menu. There are two analog mic line inputs on the back panel of the QTX controller, labeled 1 and 2. These correspond to the input port selections available in this drop-down menu. As our paging audio source will be connected to port 1 of the controller, we can leave the input port set to 1 and save. Next, we'll add our second audio source for background audio. Begin by clicking the Add Source button. This will look slightly different than when we edited input audio source 1, as the default factory configuration for the QTX controller included an initial setting for that source. For audio source 2, we're adding it as a new source, so we'll begin by naming it. We'll then select the source type, and you'll note that when adding a new source, the source type is not defaulted. But the option will be the same, only analog audio sources at this time. Likewise, the device hostname field is not defaulted, but our only option will be the QTX controller that we're connected to. As we've already assigned the paging audio source to input port 1, we'll see that input port 2 is the only option available. Select input port 2 and save. If you recall, when we configured the zone settings in the zone list, there was only a single audio source available for background audio. In the default factory configuration, the background audio source was set to input port 1. In our example, we're connecting our paging audio source to input port 1, and our background audio source is connected to port 2.